So good afternoon, everybody. So a pleasure to be and to moderate the final panel. So thank you, everybody, for your attendance in these 2 days. So hopefully we have a fruitful discussion in this last panel here. And most importantly, thank you for all the colleagues that are joining us in the panel today. So as Mustafa said, I'm Karine Bueno. I lead the PRB review team at UNEP FI, providing feedback and guidance to the banks that are implementing the principles for responsible banking. And to discuss future, but also how do we build the pathway to the future, I have the honor to have here with me some colleagues. So thank you so much for joining, Luanne. So Luanne from CIMB, and you, sorry, just read your name, right. So Luanne from CIMB, Head of Group Sustainability, thank you for joining. Mr. O, Deputy President of Hana Financial Group, thank you for joining. Mr. Shanning from Bank of Jiangsu and also member of the Banking Board, thank you for joining. And Ms. Louise from ING in Asia, thank you for joining Green Finance ING in Asia. So thank you all for joining. So before we start with the questions here, so just to bring a little bit of the context of the discussion, I think during these 2 days we discussed a lot about how also to be responsible banking or build actually a responsible business as well. We've saw many challenges, many discussions on how to do things and how to implement. And of course, we've also discussed it and saw discussions on biodiversity, financial health and inclusion, so things that are affecting the business and how we as business also affect social and environmental challenges that we have. From a principles for responsible banking perspective, we also have mentioned in these 2 days that we are very happy actually to see now more than 300 members, so we have 320 signatories of the principles, and it represents half of the bank's assets. So it's a very important network and a very important group of financial institutions, and with a powerful, I think, potential actually to transform and to create positive impact. And in Asia, we are very happy also to see that this is the second largest community of PRB banks. So we have 60 banks in Asia. So it's a very important network also for you. So we really hope that the challenges also that we have, the role that Asia has to play in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, in achieving the Paris Agreement. So it's a very good, I think, platform to collaborate and to amplify the impact that we have. So this is a very special year also for the Principles for Responsible Banking. They were launched in 2019. The founding banks and all the banks, they have an initial period of 4 years to establish the foundations to really transform their portfolio. So this is the initial group of banks that were founding banks like CIMB as well, that are reaching this initial 4-year milestone. But it's also a time to think about the future, right? So we do have a core group of 30 banks that are working together with us to what we call the PRB 2030. So if we look to 2030, and the future is right away, it's right here, 7 years from now, what's the vision that we have, where the banks will be in 2030? And what are the things that we need to start considering now to make this happen, right? So it's, again, as I said, a very special moment for us to think about the future, but without losing track of what needs to be done today. And the challenges that we have on, to implement and to create a more positive impact, they are not all overcome, we know that. So we need to think about the future, but being very realistic and start working on this pathway now. So the discussion today will bring this future perspective and also this concrete perspective on the pathway and on the journey that the banks are building. So it's an honor to, again, to receive you here. And it's an interesting group of banks here as well, because all the 4 colleagues here, all the banks have reviewed their main bank's strategy. So not only the sustainability strategy, but the bank's main strategy to incorporate social and environmental elements or commitments actually to this strategy, right? So this is a very important milestone also from a PRB on a principles perspective. So I'm very happy actually to have this group of banks here with me. And the first question is to Luanne. So Luanne, CIMB has a strategy that is Forward 2003 Plus strategy, and you incorporate sustainability as one of the key drivers of this bank's strategy, right? Can you share with us what are the most important medium, long-term social and environmental issues that were considered, when discussing and putting sustainability as one of the core issues in the bank's strategy? Thank you.
Thank you, Karine. So for those of you who haven't heard of CIMB, maybe just a very quick introduction. So CIMB is an ASEAN-based bank. We're based out of Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and we operate in about 15 markets, and we're in all of ASEAN. We're about 150 billion USD in assets, so pretty small compared to many of you here. So when we started on our sustainability journey, and this was back in 2018, just around when PRB was being formulated. This is when we started thinking about what it meant to be a responsible bank and what that would mean for our strategy. And honestly, at that point in time, we didn't really have a clue. Because now it's completely different because we've got PRB with the definition or guiding principles of what responsible banking looks like. Back then we didn't. So a lot of things were very, very fuzzy. And one of the things that we did actually one of our very good first steps was to join PRB to kind of figure it out together with the other banks. So our philosophy really is to create net positive impact. That means reducing our footprint, reducing harm in everything we do, but also creating positive impacts so that net, you've got a positive impact. And of course, we do this across what we do within ourselves, our own company, our clients, as well as in our communities. Now, initially, our focus was climate. Why? Because that's almost all we knew. So I'm just being really honest here. We started with what we thought was important, and we weren't wrong. Climate is still important, but now there are also many other things coming in. Also, one of the big drivers for us was managing reputational risk. And so what we did was when we started first putting in just the policies, the risk management tools and guidelines, and then only we started looking at business growth. So just looking back in 2018 till now, so many things have changed. It's been, 5 years? Back then, there was no regulation around this. We were running ahead of the regulators. None of our peers, at least in Malaysia, were doing it. Some of the Singaporean peers had, sustainability policies. For example, when we announced our coal exit in late 2020, we were the first emerging market bank to do this globally. So we were, nobody else was doing it. Our clients were completely unready. The organization wasn't prepared, and that's including myself. I'd been in the job for 2 months. So very, very different. And, what's happened now is that things have changed a lot, but our business case and underlying reasons for putting sustainability and ESG in our core strategy remains. And what is that? Number one, it was our investors. Our investors were asking about sustainability, and it's still very important, and actually now even more important. In addition to climate, now they're asking us about biodiversity, human rights. These are now newly in our material issues. On the risk side, that is increasing. Transition risk, physical risk is increasing. Business opportunities have actually started to materialize. At that point in time, we were talking about it, but it was more of a hope. Now that has materialized into real money to be made. And most of all, it was really alignment with our values. So although a lot of things, the environment has changed, the underlying reasons and the business case for us to do this has really just proven itself over and over again. And it was really, really, timely and fortunate that we were able to kind of embed sustainability in our core strategy.
Thanks, Luanne. Very interesting to see that, the topics also can change, new topics are added. but there's an underlying commitment actually to, to take the business as responsible as possible. And then again, as you said, it started with climate, there's the social issues coming, the biodiversity, so very interesting to hear. Shanning, in your case, so Bank of Jiangsu, so China has a very clear view on how the economy and society will develop in the next 5 years with the 14th five-year plan. So we have two key elements there on climate and poverty alleviation, and of course the role and the agenda on digitalization. Can you share a little bit with us, how these big topics, social and environmental topics, affect your bank's strategy? How are you addressing them, and if there are other topics that are being considered with a future look?
Sure. Karine, you're absolutely right. China has a very clear vision on climate and the financial inclusion as well. So the environment I'm facing is quite different to what Luanne is facing back in ASEAN. So let's talk the climate first. China, released its first climate reduction target back in 2009. Then in 2015, China, released its renewed and updated the NDC target under the Paris Agreement. And then, in November 2020, our chairman, publicly announced China's new climate commitment, which is, the trying to reach carbon peak by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2060. So the vision is very clear. But the challenge for financial institutions in China is how to translate that, this macro vision into the concrete, accurate, task or target the banks can aim for. So in my view, there's still some gaps there, because I constantly stress that banking are heavily regulated sector in China. Although following the China's 30-60 climate commitment, the various ministers have gradually released their action plan, how they're gonna implement the 30-60 climate commitment, but when we're talking about the financial sector, we still don't really have a very concrete sort of roadmap how to go down that carbon commitment journey. Yesterday we briefly mentioned it as well. Banks need to move from their financial target to the impact target, and obviously what the UNEP FI wanted is to have the bank need to demonstrate, how much emission reduction you have achieved on banks' assets. But that was a bit difficult because there's no cap. There's no reduction cap target in China's commitment. So there are emission intensity target and the energy intensity target, but no cap target. So for banks, that would be quite difficult for them to do it. Having said that, the China commitment has led to a great progress in carbon reduction. In the latest global carbon budget report, the budget report 2022, published by the Global Carbon Project, China's total carbon emission had reduced by 0.9% in 2022. Well, as opposed to 0.8 reduction by the EU and 1.5% increase in USA and a considerable increase in other major economies. So the China Commission has led to a good result, good progress so far. So now let's go back to the financial sector. So what does it mean to banks? So I look at it from two aspects. Firstly, the risk. So there are increasing concerns over climate-related risk, both at the regulatory and central bank level and the individual financial institution level. So what the Central Bank of China, which is the PBOC, has done is they initiated a carbon risk stress testing pilot project back in the second half of 2021. So the first test was on the asset, the loan asset provided to three main industries, including power, cement, and steel. Then in 2022, this stress testing expanded to 5 other sectors. So in total, 8 sectors have been covered. And those 8 sectors are actually covered by the China's national carbon market. So, I mean, this basically means, the central bank want to understand how the carbon risk, what kind of the impact the climate would have on the banks as a whole, and so to understand how that would affecting the systemic risk of the banking industry as a whole. Many banks in China now also integrate the climate risk into their overall wider risk management framework, including my bank. Then from the business aspect, the climate commitment also generates new business opportunities. Renewables, of course, but increasingly, the green finance opportunities are also emerging. The transition finance opportunities are also emerging. The G20 had published, a transition finance framework. So the China's regulators, the PBOC and CIMB, are now working together, trying to establish taxonomy for transition finance. So definitely that will generate new business opportunities. I think I'll stop there. Yeah.
Thanks, Shanning. I think there are some interesting things here. So one is banks committed to also deliver on the needs of the country and aligned with the national plans. Things that, business opportunities that are coming and now being materialized, but will, integrate more the future of, the bank and the result, some risk perspective here as well. So thanks for sharing. Mr. O, Hana Financial Group has declared its ESG vision as a big step for tomorrow, right? So my question, and it's a quite interesting vision. So my question is, what are the global and local challenges within tomorrow for you? What does it mean when we look to Hana Financial Group? Thank you.
안녕하십니까. 저는 그 하나금융그룹에서 ESG를 담당하고 있는 오종태 부사장입니다. 먼저 오늘 그 아시아 태평양 지역의 지속가능한 금융의 미래와 UNEP F와의 책임은행 원칙에 따른 은행의 역할을 논의하는 이 자리에 제가 참석하게 되어 매우 영광이라는 말씀을 먼저 드립니다. 그 사회자께서 말씀하신 저희 하나금융그룹이 추구하는 내일은 바로 지속가능한 미래입니다. 다음 세대가 더 잘 살 수 있는 미래를 만들어가는 것이 저희 하나금융그룹의 목표입니다. 이를 위해 저희 하나금융그룹은 지난 2021년 2050 탄소 중립 선언을 했고 지속가능한 미래를 위한 그룹의 큰 발걸음을 모티브로 한 빅스텝 포 투마로우라는 ESG 비전을 선포한 바 있습니다. 이러한 비전의 달성과 지속 가능한 내일로 가기 위한 의미 있는 첫 발걸음을 내딛고 저희 하나금융그룹은 두 가지 추진 목표를 세우고 이를 달성하기 위해 함께 노력하고 있습니다. 첫 번째 추진 목표는 2030N60입니다. 2030년까지 지속가능금융 부분에 총 60조 원의 자금 조달과 투자를 실시하는 것입니다. 지난해인 2022년까지는 저희 하나금융그룹은 18조 원에 달하는 지속가능금융 실적을 달성했습니다. 앞으로도 하나은행과 하나증권을 비롯한 저희 하나금융그룹 모든 관계사는 ESG 채권 발행은 물론 녹색금융과 ESG 테마 금융을 확대해 나갈 것입니다. 두 번째 추진 목표는 제로앤제로입니다. 2050년까지 사업장의 순탄소 배출량과 석탄 프로젝트 파이낸싱 잔액을 제로로 만들겠다는 것입니다. 하나금융그룹은 2022년 10월 국제적 표준으로 자리 잡고 있는 과학적 기반 탄소 감축 목표인 SBTi로부터 탄소 감축 목표에 대한 승인을 획득했습니다. 이에 맞춰 하나금융그룹은 2030년까지 사업장 탄소 배출량을 2020년 대비 42% 감축할 계획이며 2040년까지는 75.4%를 감축할 계획입니다. 2050년까지는 사업장 탄소 배출량 제로를 달성해낼 것입니다. 아울러 자산 포트폴리오 배출량은 고탄소 섹터별 감축 방식에 속하는 자산군을 대상으로 2030년까지 32.8%, 2040년까지 64.6%를 감축할 예정입니다. 이러한 탄소 중립 이행 경로를 따라 2050년도에는 금융 배출량에 대한 탄소 중립을 달성할 계획입니다. 먼저 이를 위해 하나금융그룹은 사업장 온실가스 감축을 위한 친환경 설비 투자를 확대해 에너지 사용 절감을 지속적으로 추진해 나갈 계획입니다. 자산 포트폴리오 배출량 감축을 위해서는 온실가스 다배출 산업군에 저희 하나금융그룹이 지속가능금융 산업정책 가이드를 적용해 ESG 제한업종과 유의업종에 대한 자산을 관리하는 한편 저탄소 기업과 산업에 대한 투자를 확대할 예정입니다. 또한 저희 하나금융그룹은 이러한 중장기 추진 목표를 실천하고 성과를 투명하게 공개하여 모든 이해관계자들과 소통하기 위해 지속가능금융 프레임워크를 제정하였습니다. 지속가능금융 프레임워크는 기후변화 등으로 인한 환경 사회적 위험을 식별하고 평가하고 관리하기 위한 지침으로 온실가스 다배출 산업에 대한 제한 가이드를 두고 있습니다. 더불어 녹색금융으로 자금이 원활히 조달될 수 있도록 녹색 분류 체계인 K 탁사노미를 준용한 지속가능금융 분류 체계 가이드도 도입하였습니다. 이 밖에도 저희 하나금융그룹은 ESG 경영을 포함한 지속가능 경영 전략과 정책을 수립하고 실행하기 위해 2021년 3월 그룹 최고 의사결정기구인 이사회내 지속가능경영위원회를 신설하였습니다. 또한 하나금융그룹은 ESG 경영 확산의 일환으로 다양한 환경 문제에 대응하고 사회적 역할을 다하기 위해 글로벌 이니셔티브 참여를 지속적으로 확대하여 환경 및 사회적 역할에 앞장서고 있습니다. 대형 프로젝트 금융 취급 시 환경, 사회 리스크 관리를 위한 적도 원칙에 가입을 하였고요. 기후 리스크를 반영한 비재무정부 공시 강화를 위해 TCFT 지지선언과 보고서를 발간하고 있습니다. 또한 탄소회계 금융연합회인 피카프에 가입을 하였고 지난 2022년 5월에는 2050년까지 탄소 중립 달성을 목표로 하고 있는 글로벌 은행 간 리더십 그룹인 넷제로 은행연합회에도 가입을 하였습니다. 저희 하나금융그룹이 ESG 활동 중 가장 공을 들이고 있는 분야는 저출산 해결에 대한 문제입니다. 저출산 및 고령화 문제 극복과 보육시설 부족 문제 해결 그리고 일과 가정의 양립을 위해 2018년부터 저희 하나금융그룹은 100호 어린이집 건립 사업을 진행해 오고 있습니다. 현재까지 인구 소멸 농어촌 지역의 30개소의 어린이집과 장애아를 위한 어린이집 18개소를 비롯한 74개소의 어린이집을 건립 진행 중에 있습니다. 하나금융그룹이 이러한 노력을 통해 이루고자 하는 내일은 UNEP FI PRB가 추구하는 미래와 맞닿아 있을 것이라고 생각합니다. 저희 하나금융그룹은 앞으로도 UNEP FI와 함께 미래 세대를 위한 지속가능한 미래 투마로우를 만들어가기 위해 최선의 노력을 다할 것입니다. 경청해 주셔서 감사합니다.
Thank you, Mr. Tom. Thank you. Thanks so much for sharing. I think some common elements here again, in terms of the climate commitments, in terms of driving business. I think harmonized, taxonomies and tools. Actually, this is already, being thinking about in the bank, but also leading to 2050 as shared here. So I don't know if the sound is okay. Is it an echo? Yeah. That's why I have this. So Louise, sorry, that's why it was weird. Anyway, so Louise, for you. So you represent ING in the Asia Pacific region as well. So ING operates in 40 countries, serving 37 million clients and customers. And the bank's strategy was also updated last year, and it aims to make a difference for people and for the planet. So again, a strategy that is aiming for the future. So the same question here is, what do you see as global common challenges for the future, but also how do you think that, you're customizing and considering actually also the regional needs and, social and environmental challenges that you have in the different regions?
So I think ING is in a way unique position to be the European bank staying in APAC region and recently starting to expand more local people in not only in Korea but the other countries as well. So as you mentioned that we updated our strategy last year, and it's not only about like sustainability or sustainability department, it's for the whole banking group as well. So we are aiming to make a difference for the people and planet. What it means is that we want to stir our loan book and our kind of business function to make actual change in the world. That's our aim. And when you're talking about what would be like, say, common challenges globally, I can say that I know it's kind of like boring answer, but climate change is always on top of the mind. Even though it's boring, means that it's really important and it's kind of an immediate threat to the planet and the people as well. So if you're thinking about this, it is not only for Europe or America, it's also for APAC and some other regions as well. So it's kind of global agenda for us, at least in short term as well. But what ING want to link from climate change is what would be the impact of climate change with human activities. That will be more likely the biodiversity effect. That's something we are quite keen to work on as well, because gradually there's more interest on this, and I believe that this topic is extremely important for APAC region, especially for some countries who are providing like raw materials and really like the basic type of means for the people in the world as well. So that's one thing we are keen to work on as well. And the other thing that we want to focusing on is on social issues as well. And I understand that environmental is the imminent issues, but social cannot be ignored, and it can only be considered together to actually achieve our target as well. So for social issues, especially for APAC, what we aim to is like financial inclusion and the financial health of those not only companies and also just like a family hold as well. And this issue became more imminent since last year. This unfortunate event happened in Europe, energy crisis and inflation and supply chain disruption. Everything is impacting your, the end of the money. Your money in your pocket has been shrank, even though your salary is the same one. So this is something is crucial for APAC, and it's also quite crucial for European Union as well, because at the moment there is like nearly half of those family members, they are feeling a little bit hard to actually achieve their like the basic needs such as energy, even though they are considered as like middle range of the house income. So that's something became more crucial as well. And there will be more work that should be done, and that can only be done by collaboration with government and collaboration with other banks as well. So we understand that every banks, including 4 panels in here, want to be the leader in sustainability in financial market. So there's clearly quite tight competition among sustainable finance deals as well. But at the same time, it can only be achieved by collaborating with other banks, and especially for European banks staying in APAC, we believe that we need to collaborate with other local banks and other Asian banks to have more impact on the planet and the people as well.
Thank you so much, Louise. I think it's interesting that you've shared and mentioned also the social impacts and financial inclusion, but also not only in a perspective of just the bank expanding its portfolio, but recognizing actually the social environment, as you've mentioned, with inflation, with rise of the cost of living, and also I think you mentioned it. It's quite interesting that now sustainability business is seen as a competitive factor. So I think you all mentioned also, the financial targets, the opportunities that are there. So I think if we look back, maybe this wasn't too clear in some years ago, but I think again, looking to the next 5 years, this is probably going to be stronger also when we look to the business and to the portfolio of the bank. So thanks for sharing and bringing also the social perspective here. So I think, of course, what we hear, of course, a very strong focus on the climate change, on meeting the Paris Agreement. And I think when we talk about the future, there are clear agendas and clear developmental issues and targets with the Sustainable Development Goals, with the Paris Agreement. This is there. And of course, I think climate took a lot of the future discussions, because then we are looking to 2050, we are looking to 2030. So of course, this is one of the issues that will remain. But I think it was interesting also to hear other perspectives, like the partnership with regulation and the impact of the regulation here, the social elements that come to the table, and the commitment of the bank to create a positive impact, leading to future impacts as well. So my final question here, and it's going to be the same question for all of you. So just mindful that we have 10 minutes. Thank you so much for the panel. So my final question here for you, you've shared already some of the things that you're doing already to build this future, because again, we didn't want to have just a conversation about what's there and theoretical. We are building the future now. 7 years is nothing, as we are discussing. So can you share, and starting with you, Luanne, can you share a little bit of what are you doing today to build this future? And it interferes in the decisions that you're taking today that will lead actually to this desired strategy that you're building for the bank. Thank you.
Thank you. So yeah, we've made a lot of commitments, but as I've heard from a number of people, commitments are just numbers and stuff you put on paper until it really translates into action on the ground, and until our clients start moving as well. So there's been a lot of that focus within CIMB. But first, just internal. So I'm going to talk about stuff we're doing internally, stuff we're doing with our clients, as well as stuff we're doing in the wider ecosystem. So internally, we have, and I'm sure many of you here have a commitment to become net zero in our operations by 2030. One interesting thing that we've done is that we've put in place an internal carbon price. It's kind of a hybrid plan where we charge the business units if they don't meet their carbon caps, and we've actually announced our internal prices is about $15 per ton now, but it's going to ramp up to about $70 in 2028. Internally, we also have established a very cool thing called the Library of Things in our headquarters, where people can borrow items and return them instead of just books, so things that you don't use. So that's a kind of living example of the circular economy within our office. But of course, the main thing is with what we do with our clients. So as a member of NZBA, we have already set 2 sector targets for coal and cement. That was done last year. And we are working frantically now to work on the other 7 and announce them pretty soon. And the next thing really, and this is where the rubber hits the road, is the action plans coming out of those 9 sectors. So what are we going to do with the clients who are already green? How do we increase our portfolio in that? How do we shift the clients who are already moving but not fast enough? How do we incentivize them? And then how do we manage the ones who are not moving or not moving as fast as we want? So one thing that we're planning to do is to create playbooks for our relationship managers on strategies on how to engage with the clients, how to have these conversations. Because, climate is a huge topic. It's very scary, even for me, and I work in this job. So can you imagine for the relationship manager, this is like probably 2% of their work, and they need to have these conversations with their clients who probably know already a lot more than them. So how do we equip our relationship managers to have those conversations? And of course, so upskilling the relationship managers, that's a huge task for us. But also, we talked about, being competitive, and it is being more competitive, but it's also, I think, a little bit scary because the temptation then is to win the Green Deal, you go really soft on your sustainability targets, for example, with the clients, and relaxing your requirements. I've seen that happen, and that is something that we need to really safeguard against. So that's what we're doing with our clients. Now, however, I'm thinking about how we move the entire kind of ecosystem, because as financial services providers, as a bank, we are just one of many kind of levers or drivers in the ecosystem to get our customers and get industry moving towards a low carbon economy. So how do we catalyze other parts of the ecosystem to also support that change and that direction? So one thing that we do is to work with the regulators on critical topics like climate change. We're also, for example, on the business advisory group for the global biodiversity framework implementation in the country. So lending the business voice and the voice of financial services to these very, very critical plans and policies, so that we're all moving in the same direction. But also working with peers, so for example, working within the PRB, the NZBA working groups, that's been very useful. And finally, driving industry participation within our clients and our networks. So quite early on, we started a network. It's called the CEO Action Network, and it's now got about 60 over key leading businesses in Malaysia who are all driving towards corporate sustainability. So this is something that we're trying to do, just kind of trying to move the entire ecosystem, and we kind of wanted to get it to a place where it'd be so uncool to be not sustainable and to not have a 2050 pledge, and we want to get everyone on that same journey.
Okay, good. So a healthy competition here as well. So good to hear. Shanning, can you share a little bit of, again, what you're doing today to be in the future? And you is the general manager of the Green Finance Department. So I think Luanne also mentioned a lot of the client engagement and how to move together with the customers. Yeah.
Sure. Likewise, we have done a lot of stuff internally. Our approach is also from, broadly speaking, from 2 angles. One is the business angle, the other is the risk angle. So on the business abstract, so we've been developing so-called green finance the business all the time. Since the green loans or concept came about around 2013 in China. So I mean, business is always there, and our IMs, our branches are always doing this. But the risk is actually not much attention being paid to, like environmental risk, climate risk, social risk. So in my bank, it's like the business always there without any sort of extra sort of attention to that. Risk is something we really work on. Been working on. So I mean, as we're becoming more aware of you have to look at the risk in terms of to wrap up your support to climate, to biodiversity, to other social agendas. So it's really you need to adjust your strategy. That's the reason why we became the PRB signatory in April 2021, because you need firstly you need a clear vision, and secondly you need a strategy to realize that vision. So that's the reason we became a PRB signatory. So that happened in April 2021. Then in May 2021, so a month later, we publicly released our action plan to support carbon neutrality. So it is quite a comprehensive action plan, primarily focused on both business and the risk, and our own sort of operation, how to become net zero in terms of your operation. So they're quite comprehensive. So that action plan actually kick-started the group-wide green finance development in my organization. So the green finance department I'm heading now actually served as the secretariat of that group-wide, group green finance effort. So that actually helped us to get the momentum to build up and to really push the adjustment of strategy and the optimization of the assets, structure of the asset. So I'll give you a rough number. So at the end of 2021, the group-wide green asset was $33.2 billion. So that's 14.5% of our total asset. And the green asset, group-wide green asset, increased to $46.4 billion, and the share increased like 5 percentage points up to 19.3%. So that demonstrates the action plan does have a great positive impact on the structure of our business. So on the risk side, we gradually established our own overall risk management framework for environmental and social risk. So it's four-tiered. So on the strategy, on the top, this risk strategy, we have PRB. That we adopt the PRB framework to help us to keep our strategy aligned with SDG, Paris Agreement, and national priorities. Then the second layer tier is the policy, credit policy. So we took a sectoral approach. So we gradually we stimulate the credit policies for 27 sectors. So that details what kind of environmental and social risk you got to look at. So when our IM, our branches, to do their due diligence, what aspect they need to look at. And the third layer is actually at the actual transaction level. So for project finance or project-related finance, we use equity principles. Then for any balance sheet-based lending or financing, then we developed our own ESG rating methodology back in 2020. So so with these two sort of tools, you could, have a good sort of management of the social and environmental risk of all your transactions on transaction level. Then the fourth, that's individual transactions. So then how you manage the ENS risk of the portfolios? That's stress testing or sensitivity analysis. So we work very closely with the PBOC, which is central bank. So we developed our own methodology how to do the stress testing. Then lastly is disclosure. We were one of the 4 Chinese banks who joined the China-UK Green Finance Task Group, and back in 2018. One of the work that the task group was working on was to how to integrate, how to do the financial disclosure as per TCFD. So we've been trying doing that back in since 2018. So from 2019 to every year we have been sort of disclosing, and that the depth and width of disclosure has been increasing year by year.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, I'll stop there.
So just to hear also, Mr. Oh. So how is Hana delivering tomorrow?
저희는 그 ESG 전략을 수립하는 것보다 실행하는 것이 훨씬 더 중요하다고 그렇게 생각을 하고 있습니다. 전략을 잘 실행하기 위해서는 전략에 대한 임직원들에 대한 공감을 얻는 것이 필수적이라고 생각을 하고 있습니다. 저희 하나금융그룹은 임직원들의 공감을 얻기 위해 ESG 내재화를 꾸준히 진행을 해오고 있습니다. 하나금융그룹은 모든 임직원들을 대상으로 ESG 금융교육을 실시하고 있으며 여신심사 등 전문 파트에는 외부 회계나 컨설팅 전문 업체와 협업하여 여신심사 시 ESG 리스크를 반영할 수 있는 교육을 실시하고 있습니다. 모든 임직원들이 쉽게 참여할 수 있는 에너지 절약 캠페인, 일회용품 절약하기 캠페인, 헌호 기부하기 등의 캠페인 등을 주기적으로 진행을 하고 있습니다. 또한 그 그룹 CEO 평가에 ESG 평가를 반영을 하고 있으며 하나은행의 경우 임원 및 모든 부서의 KPI에 ESG 평가를 추가하고 있습니다. 저희 하나금융그룹은 ESG 관련 규제에도 선제적으로 대응을 하고 있습니다. 금융감독원에서 발표한 기후리스크 관리 지침서에 따라 자산 포트폴리오에 대한 탄소 배출량 측정과 관리, 그리고 기후 시나리오 분석 등을 통해 실시하고 있습니다. 또한 환경부에서 발표한 한국형 녹색 분류 체계 가이드라인을 준수하기 위해 녹색 분류 체계 전산화 작업을 진행하고 있습니다. 이러한 하나금융그룹이 ESG 내재화를 위한 오늘의 다양한 노력들은 그룹의 ESG 비전인 빅스텝 포 투마로우를 이루기 위한 초석이 될 것입니다. 감사합니다.
Thank you so much. Louise, can you share a little bit of, again, the global but local perspective as well on how you're building the future?
How long do I have? 1 minute?
We are out of time, but please take your time, Louise.
Okay, sure. I'll just briefly talk about our portfolio approach. It's called Terra. That's the way trying to achieve net zero in our loan portfolio. So that's scope 3, and we currently have 9 carbon intensive sectors included in Terra approach. So we publish climate report annually, so you can actually see how each sector has certain target that's based on science or kind of modeling, and what we are on the journey onto that track as well. And currently we are also thinking about adding 1 or 2 sectors such as aluminium that might be on the agenda, and at the same time, if you have some kind of roadmap for your portfolio, you want to talk that with your client, otherwise you will never have any kind of real impact on the industry. So what we are aiming to do is, with other bank, we were the co-founder of the called Responsible Steel. That's one of the kind of voluntary initiative by financiers on that will provide funding to the steel industry. So that's one of the kind of our motivation to change. And the other thing is that for some specific sectors such as energy or some others, they are normally considered as more like those bad guys in terms of carbon emission. So they may not be eligible for standard sustainable finance. And but we are quite happy or open to have some discussion with the client on transition finance or transitioning to energy transformation in their business structure as well. That's one thing. And the other thing I want to touch on that may be relating to like bringing present to the future is the regulation and technology. So for regulation-wise, because we are the European bank, we are mainly binding to EU taxonomy and some other regulation, but we are also working in APAC region. So we have domestic regulation. Sometimes there is some gap that should be, I mean, there should be a gap because it should reflect domestic circumstance and industry-specific criteria as well. So for example, for shipping, we have different criteria for transition finance in Korea and compared to EU as well. So that's something we are working on quite closely. So we are trying to provide global standard, but at the same time to be flexible to be localized for some specific sectors as well. And for technology-wise, there are two things that we need to think about. One is energy technology map. So with those energy transition, we clearly should have some kind of technical transition or new type of energy. That's something you are not that familiar at the moment. And as being a banker, you are not really the professional on that area. So what we can do is we are working with those clients who are on that industry to develop those kind of transitional energy roadmap that's based on technology as well. And the other thing that's more internal is trying to use the technology to track our portfolio and trying to have more effective solution for ESG transition as well. So those are the two things from technology as well.
Excellent. Thank you, Louise. Thank you all. So I'll try to summarize some of the things that I've heard here. So we are back here in 2030. So we are going to see what, right? So first of all, I think from hearing you, one thing that is clear for me is like, you know, ESG climate risk is really streamlined. It's not even a discussion anymore. It is just part of the regular risk procedures. I think you all have mentioned, you know, how you're improving that. And again, if you want to deliver a different impact, you know, it is going to be streamlined. Even, you know, it's not a discussion anymore, so it's there. The other thing is the full, you know, and the greater focus on making new opportunities and making new business. So let's look 7 years from now, probably these portfolios are more robust, also in terms of what you said, Luanne, in terms of, you know, the criteria, the requirements, so, and, you know, the competitive factor as well. So we'll probably be discussing what's the next opportunity, you know, climate is kind of, you know, on track by 2030, so it's a wishful thinking, but, you know, let's build the future with a wishful thinking. But we are discussing new opportunities. Where's the next hotspot, you know, gold spot and a gold pot, sorry, for, you know, for business opportunities. So maybe this is another thing that we'll see in 2030 here. The other thing that I hear a lot is, you know, the relationship with clients going beyond just, you know, a product discussion. So we all mentioned the importance of engaging clients, helping clients, providing tools to clients also to discuss their transitions. So maybe, you know, if we look to the past, this wasn't like super clear. So the relationship with the client is really based on what's your balance sheet, what is your economic situation, that's it. But I think, you know, in 7 years from now, probably more elements were added, and the relationship with the clients are, you know, also addressing different elements that are not there today. The other thing that I've heard is also, you know, the employees and the culture, and we also had another panel around culture as well. You all mentioned the need and the actions that you're taking to upskill employees. So this is, again, something that maybe, you know, in the future, we all have a better understanding of the social and environmental issues, the responsibility that we have, and not only with an impact within the bank, but you also mentioned some, you know, behavioral and actions that you're taking inside the bank to showcase, and help employees to have a more circular action and etc. So I think this is also the other thing that I've heard. And the other thing is, I'm just finishing here, don't kill me, time, sorry. But the other thing finally is also this collaboration that I also heard from all of you. So the recognition that there's a need to discuss with regulators, there's a need to discuss with other stakeholders, there's a need to engage, different players actually in order to deliver the future that we want to see. So I think maybe, in 7 years, we will see more, collaboration within different, stakeholders to really achieve what are the global goals. So not only from an individual perspective and a bank's perspective, but also like to a more systemic change, as you also mentioned. So I think there are the main points actually that I've tried to summarize here with you today. So I really thank you all for participating in this final panel here, and thank you all for being with us and staying with us until the end of the conference. So we have Ninita now with the final words to close the regional roundtable. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you.